What's up, everyone? Welcome to the next lesson. We are starting the exterior series, really juicy lessons, mostly on 3D part, which all of us love, I assume. We will literally point out what's important in 3D and how AI kind of disrupts different stages of commercial day exterior. Today, we'll just focus on preparing our scenes so they are ready for AI to do its magic. Everything in an easy, digestible way. So let's get at it. So first off, in a normal 3D pipeline, we work on a 3D scene, we start shading, we render, and then we do post-production. It's how we are used to doing things. Achieve the best 3D output possible, and improve it later in post. But the thing is that nowadays, we can have something that's not so great in 3D, but eventually, we will end up with something even better than before. So there's a shift in thinking, and one of those things that might look worse in our renderings is low quality people. We can actually put crappy 3D models because enhancers will turn them into pure gold. So that's a nice possibility, but there's a challenge though, because putting them in a good position already in 3D, that's the challenge. Understanding what makes a good entourage is often a post-production skill, and not every one of us have it. So this brings us to this and the next lesson. In the next two lessons, we will talk about placing people, amongst other things. We will actually talk about architectural aspects, landscape and entourage, because AI won't help us if we don't take care of those aspects ourselves. Okay, so let's go through the list. First of all, architecture. Generally, we want to have our 3D models in a state as close to 100% as possible. That's the main focus of our images. We don't want to rely on AI to improve it. There's always the risk that they will hallucinate and the precision might slip away. So we want to protect it and we want to have our models as refined as possible. We need to put some effort into details, into shading as well, The materials need to be great because AI often adds dirt, stains, which is not great for a commercial product. So the idea is straightforward. Try to implement as many details in architectural models as you possibly can. Okay, so that was like a super quick one. Now we'll go deeper. Next up, there's the landscape aspect. Landscape is something you absolutely need to take care of. Trees, plants, greenery. That's what makes a difference between a basic 3D render and a really powerful one. Let me prove it to you. You can see 3 different types of trees, and all of those images here, the tree selection is suboptimal. That's interesting. It's not so obvious, and if you don't know it, maybe you won't guess it, but now that you know, can you guess what it is? What's wrong with those? Either way, let me explain. Even though this image might look okay at first, but there's something problematic about those trees. The problem is that every single tree blends into one blob of visual noise. The tree in the foreground, the tree in the background, they blend into a single leafy mess, and it's hard to understand the space. And you know what? AI would blend it even further, making this whole space super duper confusing. So in this case, you have just one tree, and that particular tree has a lot of micro contrast in its crown. And if only you would diversify the hues of this single tree between different regions here, or maybe different species, that's even better. That would make this whole image easier to read and easier for AI to handle with. Quite interesting, isn't it? Let's go a bit further, Next up, we have those pine trees here. And maybe you wanna guess what's the problem with them. Stop if you like. Anyway, here it's a different problem. It's a situation where it just doesn't kind of work. We have old pines and freshly built skyscraper. It feels like 2 different worlds, right? When we have these old pines, it immediately suggests that there used to be a forest and it was partially cut down, and that just doesn't happen. And on the other hand, it's impossible they grew it from scratch. So in this sort of images, we rather look for a tree that's quite straight, young, well maintained, and trimmed into more uniform shape. So the selection, the contextual selection is very, very important. And last tree example is this one. Here we have yet another problem. There are compositional problems here. Compositional aspect and the visibility ones. Trees can block views in some places and open the view in others. And of course, this will affect how we interpret the subject of the image. In this case, everything is opened way too much. And as a result, the building on the left plays an important role in the image, which we don't want. Yeah, so that's not so obvious problem, but it's a problem. And actually you can fix it by just slapping 1 or 2 additional trees. Your clients won't care. Finally, in this image, we have this nice, almost tunnel vision focus on the architecture. We have different species, so there's no issues with overlapping crowns. We also have placed them strategically, so they visually point to the architecture. And I think one cool aspect about plants is that always when you're placing plants, leaves or branches, imagine them being like invisible hands and fingers. They kind of point in a direction and further immerse viewers into the image. And to achieve this effect of everything pointing at the right direction, we need to do the typical toilet left, toilet right. But by the end of the day, this is what makes the image what they are. You can see this in this foreground, how the leaves nicely point to the right directions. And by the way, about the landscape also, it's not only about the trees, it's about the bushes, shrubs, and a couple of bigger plants as well. Here we have another example when bushes are not so great. When you use a generic scatter or something like that, everything looks just generic, you know? And it's definitely less engaging compositionally. One thing is how generic it looks, but another is that these solid bushes create a wall of bushes. And again, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it certainly creates a boundary and makes this whole depth less readable. In the next example, we have different generic scatter with more flowers, and this one kind of doesn't create wall of bushes. This is what I just said, that you can have different plants, and when you have more and particular ones, they can create the soft edge of bushes. So you have like a gradient of visibility behind them. It makes the depth more interesting in a way. But here there's another problem, you know, they look terrible in the foreground. It looks super random. It looks like a forest almost. So yeah, that one doesn't look like a design area. So while those aspects are on the side of your clients, but there's always a place to move plant here, there, you can always juggle the objects in the foreground and just immerse viewer in more engaging composition. So that's it for today. In the next lesson, we will talk about placing people. See you there.